Okay, Sandy, so tell me, how did you come to know Real?
Okay, so I was working on my PhD thesis in 2000, and in my country of France, we don't take classes anymore. And I definitely had the desire to go to the US to carry on with my education, in part because the literature we read in economics mostly come from the US. So in the year 2000, 2001, I actually spent a lot of time contacting different universities all over North America, including Canada and the US. And I sent basically 200 emails contacting those places and telling them I work on questions of regional development in Europe, I have my own funding, but I do need an advisor, so would you be willing to advise me for my work? And as you can imagine, many people did not answer me at all. Some did, but they were very busy, I had too many students already. And I kept insisting, and among those people was actually Jeff Ewings. So I was a bit unsure because I didn't know him before, nor did I know the University of Illinois. But it turned out that a professor from Brown University was visiting my university for a talk sometime in February of 2001. And after a discussion, it took half an hour to discuss with me my concerns and the fact that I had basically an invitation from 3 places: the University of Pittsburgh, University of Columbia, Missouri, and University of Illinois. He looked at it and he told me, based on the answers that Jeff gave me and also the kind of question I was interested in, definitely Illinois was the place to go. So I went for Illinois out of the blue. No one in my university had ever been to the US for research purposes, and I of course never regretted it, so it turned out very well.
And what was your first impressions of Real when you came?
So I landed, I remember, at Chicago O'Hare in September 1, 2001. So I showed up at Real the day after, September 2. Took me a bit of time to find the room, actually. If you remember well, in Davenport Hall, it was a little bit, on the second floor, not necessarily that easy to be found. But I finally found it, and I was really impressed because the group was very large, very international. At that time, there were many students from China, Indonesia, Brazil, Colombia, almost actually no one from Europe at that particular time. And as I got to know everyone, I found the environment very friendly, very supportive, extremely international, and I just loved it. To the point where I had that visa for only 1 year, and at the end of that year I asked Jeff, could I renew my stay? And he did agree. I extended my visa, so I stayed in the end until 2003, and it was wonderful. Yeah.
And what do you think that experience changed in terms of what you had in France, those education, what you saw here?
Yeah, so the big difference would be the size of the group and also the quality of the people involved in the group. Obviously at Real, the people that were part of it and are still part of it are coming from amazing universities in different countries. They are among the best from the place they're at. So, the level was very high, and I had to step up my game to be part of that group too. And on a more personal level, the one element that struck me is that after just a few days that was here, Jeff invited me for lunch, and we had a nice discussion about the ideas I had for my research and some more personal elements about his family and all. And for me, it was a bit surprised because French professors tend to be a little bit distant from their students. I had never had even a coffee with my advisor back home. So that kind of degree of how approachable he would be really was interesting and very new to me.
And let's fast track a little bit. So it's now 2015.
Yeah.
So I think Jeff approaches you and said, if you want to be the new director of Real, so how do you feel on that?
So I think it's two different feelings. First I was scared, and at the same time I was really excited. So scared because the size of the group is very large, let's be honest. And I don't really know anyone in our field or even in other fields that are caring for a group of that size. But at the same time, it's very exciting. So I wouldn't be here today if I had not been part of that group in 2001, if someone did not, out of the blue, simply invite me. And I had no prior link with Jeff in 2001. So exciting because I feel, because I've benefited tremendously from being here, see my research improve, get a career in the US. I feel it's my obligation to do it for the next generation of students. So when I get contacted from abroad, if the students or the faculty happen to be working on questions which are along our lines, yes, it's very hard for me to say no. So exciting to basically carry on with the general mission of REAL. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about and you already talked a little bit about this, but what's the advantage of the REAL Mafia network that we actually have at the lab?
So I think the one element that's absolutely tremendous is that I see a huge amount of solidarity. In other words, there is, if someone is, for instance, not necessarily specialized in one aspect of a technique or a topic, the ease at which you can ask around and be helped on a very quick turnaround is really, really impressive. And all of that means that people are saving time, there's much more work that is being done as opposed to the situation it would be if everyone were to study on their own. And that's definitely something I enjoy to support. So the different activities we have to promote that is that open room framework whereby no one feels isolated. There is a discussion that can be carried fairly easily. We have the weekly seminars of REAL, which are allowing everyone to be presenting their work, whether it's at early stage or much more advanced, and they do get feedback out of it. And we also have a few social events every now and then. So that really helps making everyone feel that they're part of the group, and eventually when they go back to their home countries, they try their best to develop the same idea in their place, which again, it's sometimes new to different places. It's definitely not the traditional framework that we see out there.
And you mentioned a little bit the size of the group. So the group is very large. So what do you think are the challenges that you face as the director of REAL right now?
Yeah.
How do you think about approaching those challenges?
So one challenge is obviously to keep track of everybody and what everybody does, because things go very quickly, and to some extent it goes in different directions in the sense that there are different techniques that are being used at REAL, all of them of course in the realm of regional science, and there are also different topics. So I think the key is to be very well organized. I actually take personal notes on each student as to what they're up to, what is the seminars they presented, so that I really keep track of what's happening there. And I think the other key is to make sure that students get organized by groups. So you actually, Andre, developed the idea of having those Monday morning 4-hour blog whereby the group of input-output and CG will be presenting their work and then get their feedback. The group of econometricians or spatial econometricians will do the same. It's excellent, and I think that's really the best way to get the work, progress much more quickly and at a higher level than otherwise.
And a little bit about impact outside the group. So what do you think of the challenge that we see nowadays in the real world in terms of research that REAL can actually contribute to?
So I would say the bread and butter of REAL is definitely to bring a regional science or spatial analysis point of view to economic questions. So it has always been all about understanding how different sectors of the economy interact with each other, how places interact with each other. And interestingly, even up to now, you still have a lot of very good economic work that is being done, but that somewhat disregards that general equilibrium approach. So the one element that makes us somewhat different from many of the economic impact studies or economic work that can be done, whether it's on climate change or any other economic variable like job creation and so on, is that we will really pay attention to how places are interacting with each other, how policies which are implemented in one location may have some spillover effects in other places. So that general equilibrium aspect has to be accounted for. And I think that the more we expose stakeholders and colleagues to the need to pay attention to those elements, the more they understand that we need to adopt an approach that will allow you to model and quantify those forms of spatial interactions.
how do you see Rio in 5 years, 5, 10 years? That's the
In 5, 10 years. So I think we're going to carry on pretty much with the general idea, that's for sure, of having a fairly nice balance of students from the University of Illinois, whether they come from ACE, Econ, urban planning or geography, and pretty much the other half coming from all over the world as visiting scholars. Mm-hmm. That we're going to be keeping. We're going to be following, of course, the evolution of our field. So techniques are changing with time. For instance, years ago, no one was really interested in paying attention to, say, the endogeneity of those weight matrices in a spatial econometric framework. Now it's becoming much more popular. So we're going to carry on with following what's happening in the different, what's happening in the fields and techniques that we are working on. And eventually, there could be slowly a little bit more involvement towards climate change studies. Mm-hmm. It's one of the aspects of one aspect of the scholarship that I'm highly interested in, and little by little I think that more and more students care about it, in part because they in the future will be facing the consequences of climate change much more than older generations. So we need to basically see how the different tools of regional science that we are working on could be contributed to the literature that's focusing on the economic impact of climate change. And there are some clear links on economic development, trade, production and yield of different crops. So there is a lot of expertise we as regional scientists can bring into that general question.
So Sandy, I know you're also trying to expand the boundaries of REAL and trying to contribute to with researchers from other areas outside the traditional areas that REAL has been worked with in the past. So tell us a little bit about this interaction with atmospheric scientists, engineers, etc.
Yeah, so traditionally REAL has collaborated a lot with other social scientists, economists, ag economists, urban and regional planners, as well as geographers. Interaction with engineers, I would say, was mostly on transportation engineering, in part because of some of the questions we looked at of a specific event that is having an impact on transportation. And it has some interesting questions in terms of modeling of the flows and eventually a bridge that cannot be used. But as I mentioned earlier, part of my interests are dealing with the impact of climate change. So we do need to have the best quality data related to weather events. So that collaboration with atmospheric scientists, to me, is highly needed. Otherwise, us as social scientists, the kind of data we will get, I know, will not necessarily be the best that can be used. And secondly, when it comes to other engineers, I'm thinking more about environmental engineers. They have some interesting insight to bring with respect to questions of virtual water flows. They are dealing with it from their point of view. It's actually very closely related to the way we deal with it, and questions of global supply chain and the amount of water embedded into that production and trade. So I think that collaboration is fairly natural. So we need to really expand on it for anyone interested in focusing on the impact of climate change.
So Sandy, besides the collaboration with other units inside the University of Illinois, we also have, I know that we also have collaboration with groups outside the US. So REAL has expanded in terms of creating laboratories outside the US, like in China and Spain. So tell us a little bit about this collaboration outside the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So it started actually right back in 2004, the University of Badajoz in Spain created EU REAL. And they have a yearly meeting that's being taking place in different countries of Europe. And now I think they have nearly 70 members all over the European Union. It's really impressive. In 2016, we signed an agreement with Nankai University in Tianjin, and they started China REAL. And the Pan American University in Mexico in 2019 is going to open Mexico REAL. And that's really impressive. I think that it means there will be some presence in Latin America, because I believe they're going to be cooperating with Colombia, Brazil, and Chile. So the one addition we've made to that is actually going on now is that one proposal that I'm currently working on, which is going to hopefully lead on some support from the National Science Foundation. The general idea is to bring together that international network that we have based on EU REAL, China REAL, and Mexico REAL, and to reach out to even more institutions throughout the world to basically carry on with the mission we've always had, making sure that foreign students come to the US, hopefully convince some students here from the university to go abroad. We have seen a little bit less in that particular direction, and also provide some workshop in those foreign institutions to basically show them what we're up to, write some grant proposals together that will really benefit their institution as well as the University of Illinois. So yeah, it's now really trying to get some funding in order to sustain this network for the years to come.
Mm-hmm. A little bit about the alumni. So we have a large network of alumni. What do you want them to feel when they leave? So after they stay 6 months or a year, how do you want them to feel when they leave REAL?
Yeah, that's a good question. So interestingly, just a few days ago, I was going over that list. As of today, that list has 376 members. It's really impressive. You're looking at folks who are mostly faculty members. Some of them work for some big organization like World Bank, OECD, and some are even part of a central bank in the country where they're from, whether it's in Korea or in Colombia. When people leave from here, what I'd like is that they obviously stay in touch in the sense that they carry on with coming to regional science meeting, and that's basically what happens pretty often, whether it's in Europe or in North America, which makes going to meetings even more interesting because the relationship has been developed, and it definitely makes it very exciting about meeting old friends. And I think also, interestingly, we see more and more people, as they go back to their country, they realize that it is actually feasible to be implementing the way they've seen here, the way of work with that open lab or sharing of ideas or weekly seminars. They try their best to basically make a clone of that system when they go back home. I believe that's the way EU REAL started in 2004. They realized that yes, they could simply try their best to bring people together, and eventually it will lead to more collaboration, more research, more grant proposals that are developed. So generally speaking, yes, people do see that way of working, and as they go back home, they try their best to get somewhat close to what they've seen here and carry on with that. So which is fantastic for us, because every now and then I am also invited for a short class or workshop in those places, and I can try my best to contribute and help them develop that a little bit further. And they also provide us with some feedback, eventually getting some new students from them, and eventually developing some grant proposals that will be funded both by the US and with the countries that they represent. So I think it's just beneficial for everyone.
Okay, so the final question is, so REAL is coming to its 30th anniversary, so what are the words that you want to give to REAL at this anniversary?
Yeah, so I think the first one is congratulations to Jeff, because now that I've been in the business of managing REAL for just 2 years, I realize the amount of involvement and devotion it takes to be caring for a group of that size. And Jeff has been doing it pretty much on his own for 3 decades by now. So I say congratulations to him, because it really requires a huge amount of devotion and desire to see it happen for making it last for so long. So that's really impressive. And the second word is, as I mentioned to you earlier, in 2001 I came as a visiting scholar here. I could not foresee whatsoever that 15 years later I would be in charge of the lab. So the second word I have is for every single visiting scholar that's stopping by those days, is be prepared. Maybe in 20 years from now, one of you is going to be asked to be helping me to complete the mission of it and carry on with the lab way beyond myself. So yeah, it's really exciting. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.